So why epic, or Legions Imperialis as they think we're gonna call it? It's epic. Well, we've done a bunch of videos already recently on epic because it's capturing our attention. I think every time you always look at wargaming, you think, I wanna build an army, not a couple of squads. So we gotta build some armies. But to do that, we're gonna need big boards and big armies. So we're gonna start the journey right now in this video of building an awesome city fight board. And not only that, Murray and I are both gonna build armies and paint them up on the channel. But this big little journey isn't gonna be held in one video. No, we're gonna be doing a series on this. So make sure to like and subscribe to stay tuned. Games Workshop have sent us a bunch of terrain for Legions Imperialis, and we're gonna start today by building that up and planning out our dream battle board for epic. It's tabletop time? Let's do it. So we've got roughly 4 boxes, and it's gonna be up to Jen and I to cut them all out and build something interesting.
Okay, I have been given the task of cutting out all of this terrain and starting to build some of it up. So I'm gonna start cutting everything out and giving my thoughts and opinions on what the sprues are like and how easily everything goes together. Let's do it. So right off the bat, when it comes to this terrain, it is really good quality. And I have to say, this is some of the most gorgeous and detailed terrain I have ever built. Of course, you have to consider the scale. This is a smaller epic size, so they could put a lot of detail in here. The customization options are really good too. You can build buildings however you want to suit your needs when it comes to building your board and your terrain. It really makes it feel more like a unique experience rather than just making something that's straight out of the box. Each of the terrain kits we got have their own set of instructions. Some of the instructions, while detailed enough, can be a little bit complicated and a tiny bit fiddly. Again, working on such a small scale, it is going to be a little bit handsy, but there's something I didn't really like in the building process. In a model kit, usually the instructions will tell you if you want to make an A or B option, but in this case, I had to wait till I was done building something to realize I could have built it a completely different way. Of course, I just went in as a gung-ho. I'm sure most of you will actually read the instruction booklet fully before you start building anything, but this is just a word of warning for anyone that does want to try building any of this terrain. Again, I have to say the quality is definitely here when it comes to these terrain kits. They look so awesome, and I can definitely see a story being told with all of these pieces. There are so many different options on how to build these buildings and make these walls. It's absolutely crazy. This does mean we're going to have a really cool board with lots of terrain options, so I'm excited for that part. But we do have a lot of work ahead of us. So while I'm still cutting out the rest of these sprues, let's go see what Dave's up to.
Walking in here, Jen has done an absolutely awesome job building all of this, cutting all of this out on sprue, and has basically offered for me to create something cool. And my idea is I would love to see a big building, something that feels like a big university campus or administrative building that could be in the center of our battlefield. So I'm gonna see how far we can take just cramming these bits together and making something cool. I use symmetry as my watchword as I worked towards making sure all of these buildings looked like something that would actually exist. Something with a bit of purpose. Kit bashing is the name of the game, and it's really fun to stretch this sort of kit and see what you can make. We've built a huge amount of terrain, and it's taken so much longer than we thought. They almost feel more like regular Games Workshop kits. We think of terrain kits as being really simple and easy, going together quickly. These have been finicky, multi-part, lots of options. And I think we've made a really cool selection of buildings, but now it's time to see how this translates to a game board. I'm not even sure this is enough. I don't think this feels like a city. But there's only one way to find out. Let's load it up and have a look. Okay, we've brought all of the model parts in. Usually we plan the board out before we build the terrain, but this time we had so much plastic kit to work with, we actually wanted to build it first.
We know we want to try and make a industrial area and more of a city built area, so we're going to try and incorporate 2 different types of terrain when it comes to building this board.
The actual standard game size of Epic is a 5 foot by 4 foot table, which is massive. We're actually going to make a 4x4. We're gonna cut off that extra foot because it will just be a bit awkward to build a table size that isn't the same as anything we usually build. So looking at what we've built, I can see 3 really distinct quarters. We have this mechanical section. We have these spires that look quite aristocratic, but then we have all these more sort of administrative, square, blocky buildings. So I think it could be quite interesting to have an administrative district, a more royal district, maybe up a little bit higher, have that slightly elevated. And then we can have a mechanical district and maybe maybe like a blasted wasteland, put rubble in, craters. Then we have 2 corners with quite a lot of building and elevation and 2 corners with very little, so they can be set up and it can be a balanced battlefield.
Alrighty, so all we gotta do is start laying out the boards and get everything glued together.
So when wargaming, we have to suspend our disbelief. Obviously, it would be cool to have apartment rows of tightly spaced buildings, but you couldn't really play a game on that. So I think we've found the middle ground by creating effectively the Regal District with its big plazas, and I really love this idea of an Aquila Plaza. I'm excited to build that. There's a lot of scratch building, a lot of painting, and I'm spending too much time talking, and we need to start. So recently we did a video on burnout, and so many people said they would rather us take our time and maybe sometimes split a project in 2. The building step of this took so much longer than we thought. Jen and I both spent 2 days each just constructing tiny buildings, cleaning off sprue tags, and coming up with cool designs. Which means we've decided to focus on that royal district, get these buildings painted up so we can show them off, and build out the plaza and get really excited for the next video where we can pull the board together and show off our armies.
So the first thing I had to make up was this giant Aquila that would be going into the main centerpiece of our more established building area. Ultimately, we'd be making our own design. I incorporated the shapes from both the 40K and the 30K version, creating our own unique Aquila sign. I also made sure to create 2 different versions. I needed a full layout of the eagle cut out in one piece, and then his torso as a separate piece. So I made sure these were separate files and then passed them off to Dave to laser cut out.
So Jen has made the vector of our Aquila courtyard. I think this is going to be an amazing centerpiece and something that you don't usually see on these city builds. But that means I've got to use the laser cutter, and Murray is the guy on TTT that knows how to use this thing, and he is having a much needed week off.
Hello.
Hey Murray, how's your holiday going?
Good.
Tell me about your time chilling out on holiday and how you'd level the laser cutter so you didn't burn the place down.
Wait, what? Underneath, you sort of open the drawer, so it opens and bangs your shins.
Yeah, I know. And there's a bunch of wires that sort of come with it, and it's really alarming, right?
Sorry, I was just drinking out of my coconut.
Very good. Well, we'll see you at work next week. We miss you. We wish you could be here on this project.
Yeah, we'll see. I might extend this. This is pretty good.
Yeah, that'd be funny. All right. Well, we'll definitely see you next week then. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, it's fun playing with Jazz's toys. Okay, so the way this is going to work is this forms the beautiful foundation of a central plaza dedicated to the Emperor and the Imperium at the height of the Great Crusade. This is all very beautiful. This isn't a horrible hive city. This is a world of Ultramar. So this second layer basically will become the central plaza elevated. We'll build some little stairs leading through. And at the center of that, now we have where our statue will go and some gardens in there. This is going to be great. But now that we've got the scale, I can start to look at building pavement, building roads, and really bringing this together. But this laser cut piece was critical to get in first because everything is being built around it. Let's do it.
So it's time to start spraying up our buildings, and we've decided to go with the theme of Kremlin. So going for more oranges and creams in our colors, which I think is gonna look really, really cool. So what I'm gonna do is divvy up what colors I want to be what using the cream and the red and start spraying them up. So I'm gonna take you outside and we can do that, yay! So after spraying down some bone white from Vallejo, I knew exactly what I wanted to do to bring these buildings to life. I started off by washing everything down lightly with a sepia wash. I didn't want to use contrast and give it too much color. I just wanted to create a light shadow on all of the buildings. After this, I dry brushed my way up to that bone white again with a top dry brush of pure white just to pick out those highlights. With the main color of the buildings established, I could go ahead and start adding in some details. Again, keeping in with that Kremlin feel, I went ahead and added some gold accents to the roofs and towers, and also painted a couple of windows in with a contrast red. I also changed some of the colors up in the other buildings, opting for a teal color for the windows. So overall, I really love how these buildings have turned out. When it comes to painting up terrain, we do tend to opt for darker and gray colors, so to see something bright on the battlefield is a stark contrast. I needed to incorporate the teal color I knew Dave would be using in his buildings on one of mine. So I went ahead and started painting this on some of the roofs and a couple of accent pieces as well, trimming these with the gold that I had used on my red building as well. I think that the incorporation of using a bright color and trimming it with the gold really make these buildings stand out and also give them that Kremlin vibe. Once I was happy with how my roofs were looking, I began painting some of the doors. I just used a contrast color to make these a bit darker, and I included this color in some of the windows as well. Lastly, I just wanted to add a few more pops of color to really make it look like these buildings were loved. So for the teal building in particular, I just added a couple of accents of that color spotted around the building. So these two buildings are going to be in the main city area, and I think they look really royal and really pretty. I also know that they're going to match Dave's buildings as well, which is super important to make sure that the board works as a whole.
So our Jen's going for the opulence, the lovely white cream buildings. I'm going for a familiar red. We really want to do something different. We don't want the grey infinity of 40k. We want to show the Imperium in a time of opulence and optimism. And I think color is a cool way to do that. So, red buildings. As we briefly mentioned, I wanted to do something really different on this board. When we see 40k, so often we see these dull and dour buildings. It's depressing. It evokes the idea of an empire of industry and administration. But this isn't a board for 40k, this is a board for 30k. And I'm coining a phrase that I'd like to call optimistic authoritarianism. The idea being that these buildings are actually designed in a more optimistic time. This isn't a oppressive Hab spire of 7 billion people, it's just a big city with a rich cultural history. Maybe this is, as we alluded to, one of the 500 worlds of Ultramar. Maybe it's not. But the point is, artistic expression and culture shown off in the buildings was something we really wanted to try. And with the domes and the spires, my brain was just pulled to the Kremlin. There's some beautiful architecture in St. Petersburg and in Moscow, and also in a lot of areas in Eastern Europe that has a style of building and coloration that isn't often seen in the Western world. Not only that, these colors are so far from what we're used to seeing in Horus Heresy and 40k, I just had to give it a crack. Now, you've been watching me do these steps. Basically, I'm throwing on just some tan as a dry brush over the whole model, and then beginning to pick out elements. Painting in a mint green on all of the rooftops. Then trimming around the balconies and edges, and various decorating lines in a stone gray. So this is the part of the hobby that I'm the worst at, if I'm honest. And it's one of the reasons I don't often paint terrain. We're lucky to work as a team, and Jen loves painting terrain. She loves the zen of it. It's the finicky stuff, right? So painting these tiny little brass things, and there's so much detail on these tiny terrain kits, especially at this scale. And if you don't paint it, it kind of doesn't matter. Like the building still looks good. Even surprisingly, the Games Workshop box art for these kits, they're barely painted. There's so much detail that just isn't painted. Go have a look at it. It's wild. So I don't need to be doing this, but then there's kind of a voice that's like, if you don't, it's not complete. And when you do it, it does look good. But oh boy, it's the repetitive tedium on so many buildings, so many of the same, like each tile has the same repeated elements. And it's like, okay, paint 400 circles in brass. One of the last colors I needed to do was the remaining metallic areas and vents, which I painted in a black metal from scale 75, before painting some of the brighter gold elements in a beautiful Retributor armor, like the Aquilas. These single coat paints, dry brushes, and techniques actually work fine at this scale. The slight amounts of the red base coat peeking through on the green areas actually just look like a bit of weathering. However, with that said, the step I do want to use to pull all this together is to give a delicate airbrush of some Agrax Earthshade to bring out some depth in various areas. I'm going to apply this sparingly at first and then build it up where I feel like we could use more, but I really don't want to make the paint job look completely homogeneous, so I'm going to be careful not to be too heavy with it. With this done, the final step is to put a little bit of color in those windows using some contrast paint. I'm not going to worry about the windowsills. I think that's going to be too much painstaking picking out given we have a whole board to paint, and the dark shading effect of the contrast paint will hide that at the eyeline distance. There are so many windows on this building, it would be painstaking to do every pane of glass, and I'd commend anyone to do it, but suggest you're probably not going to get a board done this decade. For the turrets, for something completely different and a pop of surprise, I decided to paint these blue. That's an homage to the Ultramarines and the worlds that this defends. With the template for the red buildings complete, we can move on and paint all of the remaining red buildings in exactly the same steps as I've shown here.
Yo, Dave.
G'day, g'day.
Friday night drinks, time to go.
Already?
Yes. So what are you doing?
I'm just getting a head start on next week's video. We're going to be building out the town square. It's going to be super cool, but it is the end of the weekend. Friday night drink sounds good. So let's go. We filmed the outro, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to see reveals. Thank you so much to all of our patrons for supporting these videos. It is because of you that we can make 2 videos a week. Now, if you've watched a lot of our videos, you would have heard me say that before. Let me stress, it is because of you that we can do this as a job. So we really do appreciate it. And if you'd like to consider helping support the channel in a direct way, please consider signing up to our Patreon. We share weekly behind the scenes videos chatting about the releases from last week and what we're working on in the following week, as well as sharing some personal thoughts for things happening behind the studio. And those of the mini review tier get to take part in a monthly mini review. It's good stuff and we love seeing you there. So thank you for all your support. I am shocked with just how long it's taken for us to build and assemble all of these pieces of terrain, and we've had so much fun painting them too. Honestly, a higher standard than they're painted on the box.
Yeah, it's been really cool to paint them such a bright and fun color too. I think they look really, really good.
Look at them. This is the start, the beginning of the journey. And this journey is going to be continued next week. So please like and subscribe. Check out our epic content. We'll make a playlist for it. I can't wait to share with you my Alpha Legion. I think I've come up with a really cool scheme. And you might have seen a sneak peek of some of them in the reveals. And Murray has an amazing Solar Auxilia he's working on. And they're going to be friends of his Ultramarines that he might work on down the line, but certainly that he works on for Heresy. There's so much to show you and a massive board to build. And we hope you're going to join us on the journey.
But it's getting close to closing time. So we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we're out. Thank you. Weekend time.